If we are being honest, just because this collection of books has magic doesn't mean it's magic from God's source, right? Like, we all know, or a lot of us know, that magic is in fact real. But because the way we see magic, we only see the dualistic or dark magic that we are presented in movies, TV shows, etc. And because we were told from a young age that magic isn't real, which is a complete lie, we are unaware of the true God magic. And if we were taught the truth when we were little, that yes, magic is real and there are different kinds. There's dark magic, false light magic, and God magic, we would be completely aware of what to look out for. But this is all by design. So since from, the time we were little, it was drilled into us that magic isn't real, we are all blind to it. Then some people rebel against it and think because our inner knowing knows that magic is real, we go searching for it. But what we were given, again, by design, is dark in nature. Then we see that it works, but that's the only magic we know of. So a lot of people will continue in that, not seeking the true God magic. So what if these numbers or numerical lengths show something else? If everything in this world is mathematical sequences and patterns, should we be looking at these texts from that perspective and not just at what the words themselves say from a literal sense, but what does the numerical meaning behind each letter mean? And personally, I don't think we will ever know the true meaning of these numerical significances or what the letters actually mean, which is why we just trust that God knows everything and He orders that kind of stuff. Like, He can help us navigate it. Just like astrology, like they've manipulated so many things that I've noticed when I've done fasting and things like that, when my intuition is like, you should fast, when I look back on it, it is on certain astrological dates. But that's why we trust that God will guide us with our intuition. And I think it's really important to remember that both the light and the dark use numbers to their advantage, and numbers order the matrix that we are in. And we also have to remember that God speaks to us in all ways. Like, there are signs around us constantly, like the way the wind blows when we think about something, a ringing of the ear, a feeling in our body, something that some stranger says to us on the street, but we're just not in tune with these things. And also the entities that govern this realm use the same type of tools. So that's why we have to be careful with the angel numbers and thinking that every synchronicity is from the divine, because that's not the case. And I've seen this trickery firsthand. That's why I say that. But there are ways that we can test it and make sure the outcome is divine. One of these is just by simply saying each time you're going to do something, just say anything that's not divinely guided by source God, be blocked. And it will be, as long as you know and believe that. So we just have to remember that every single thing in this world has traps built into it. Everything is used by both sides except for our intuition, our inner knowing. And that is number one. Like, if we were in a jungle with nothing to rely on but that, that's how I try to think of things when I'm getting wrapped up in the synchronicities or things like that. I have to pull back the reins on that a little bit. But as long as that is the main thing we are using to guide us, and we're learning how to perfect our intuition, I think that's the main thing that we all have to do and remember. But the tools are great, and they help us piece things together when we need clarification or to help direct us, but not, again, not as the first thing that we go to. Excuse me. So anyway, back to these texts. The main question, the main things that I want to touch on are these numbers placed in these texts divine or the opposite? And if these numbers are assigned to each alphabetical letter and each hold a specific vibration that have the power to either enlighten us or defile us, whether reading or speaking these texts, is it safe to say that these texts, with their associated numbers, have a much greater meaning than we know? I would say absolutely. And how do we know that they are showing the true God's divine orchestration and don't have dark magic behind them? You know what I mean? Like, how do we know that these texts aren't casting spells as we read them or speak them to others, like in churches or Bible studies, or when people are told they have to read these texts daily? And that's the other thing. Our voices carry the power and ability to awaken others and to also hurt others. And that's why we shouldn't be using AI voiceovers. The AI voiceovers were designed to take away these divine gifts to keep everyone asleep. God will not be able to use our voice to speak to others and get messages through to others. And again, this is why they say we have the power to give life or to cause death with our tongue. The fake God and the ruling entities know this very well, and they use us to carry out their plans. So again, if we have the power of life or death on our tongue, what if they were put together to carry out a cyclical, nefarious agenda in order to keep us trapped? Like how time keeps repeating itself. What texts were given in the past? And I'm talking about before all the stuff that we have now. And we, again, don't know all the stuff that the Vatican has hidden, all the books. They've hidden so many things from us. This is the only few things that we have to go on. And what if these were programmed into the text, a predestined timeline that they want, which leads to our demise each time? What if our own suffering and death is our own doing by us reading and speaking them unknowingly, with the power that we have being more powerful than them? What if by giving us these texts, we are actually speaking these hidden mathematical codes into existence? Like the book of Revelation, for example, which ties in perfectly to the movie The Mummy. And more than half of the world reads these so-called divine books that were handed to us by the controlling forces. And last but not least, why would an all-loving God who wants to save everybody and help everyone, which is the truth, why would that divine God not give a plain message that everyone understands clearly and cannot misinterpret? Who is the father of lies and confusion? Because it's definitely not the divine God. The divine speaks plainly and in love, and the divine wants us to be saved, and yet these texts are riddles and carefully connected stories that have opposing meanings a lot of the time, opposing messages. And that doesn't make any sense either. And of course, there has to be truth in these for it to resonate, but that doesn't mean anything. There is way more to these texts than we know. And I think you're going to also see that in the next coming videos.
In September 1994, Yitzhak Rabin, Prime Minister of Israel, received an ominous message. It was a warning that his life was in danger. The sender of the message said this information was secretly encoded in the Bible. Rabin ignored the warning. A year later, the Prime Minister was assassinated. The code hidden within the Bible not only predicted Rabin's assassination, but also predicted the date and even the name of the killer. Secretly encoded in the Bible, written thousands of years ago, are predictions of every major world event, including terrifying events yet to come. Computer scientists, statisticians, and mathematicians have found literal information encoded in the Old Testament. The Old Testament, written between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago, is based on the 24 books of the Hebrew Bible. And despite being one of the oldest texts in the world, it's remained unchanged in all that time. When scribes made copies of the Old Testament, if they made even a single error, that entire text had to be buried. Why was accuracy so important? Most would say it's because this is the Word of God, and to alter His Word would be blasphemy. But there may be a more technical reason for maintaining accuracy, that God or someone encoded secrets within the texts. In the late 13th century, Rabbi Bachya ben Asher found a code hidden in the book of Genesis. He read 4 letters, skipped 42 letters, read another 4 letters, and so on.
Remember how I referenced the number 42 when reading this story previously, and I said that I thought it had something to do with numerology? And I said this because I have made several video compilations of different people breaking down biblical texts using gematria, but also Bible verses and their corresponding numbers, as well as the exact amount of numbers used in certain words. And we all know that words are spells, so we need to keep that in mind when thinking about in terms of gematria and numerical reference to these texts. And I can't even make this stuff up. As I'm literally recording this right now, I looked up at the time and it was 1:47 on the clock. And I don't use numerology, just to be clear. I'm completely against using it because I know that's how the controllers of this world operate. The interesting part, going back to the number 42, is when I was editing this, I remembered the video surrounding this, not realizing that the number 42 was the number spoken about. And when I say the video, I mean the one that we're in the middle of. Then when I went to put this into the video, I just happened to notice it was at 74 minutes and 42 seconds, as you can see. And the time on the clock when I took a screenshot of it was at 1:42. I literally do not believe in coincidence in the sense that we are given. It's just like my friend Carrie always says, coincidence means 2 incidences that coincide, not by accident. I don't believe anything in this realm is accidental. In this video, I also show some clips surrounding the King James Version of the Bible, which was put together by 47 scholars, and the Strong's Concordance was created out of it. I also find it extremely interesting that in this version of the story of Elijah, they say, "And there came forth 2 she-bears out of the woods, and tare 42 children of them." 42 and 42. Also, it's verse 24, which is the mirror of 42. So technically, in this alone, we have 42 3 different times in this verse. And then the second time 42 is mentioned is exactly 22 words, and it's part of 2 Kings 2, verse 23 to 24. 2 plus 3 is 5, 2 plus 4 is 6, 6 plus 5 is 11, 1 plus 1 is 2, so it's 222. This is from Strong's Concordance for the number 24. So the one meaning is fresh, young barley ears, indignation, displeasure, often in response to perceived injustice or wrongdoing, conveys a sense of righteous anger or moral outrage. And this is for the number 42. In the book of Revelation, there's 42 months being the length of time the Antichrist would rule the world. The number 42 is associated with God's judgment and appears in the book of Daniel and again Revelation. The famine of Elijah's time lasted 42 months. Elijah cursed some children who mocked him, and fierce animals. Again, this is talking about the 42 that I just brought up. This is for the number 2, and the number 2 represents the fundamental duality of life, such as night and day, good and evil, and man and woman. And I would associate that with the passage of Elijah being representation of duality.